The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia pledged $150 million to the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, a public-private global health partnership, during an extraordinary virtual G20 summit on coronavirus that it chaired in March. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia announced that it would contribute $500 million to international efforts to fight the pandemic. The summit, held virtually in London, aims to raise at least $7.4 billion for Gavi to immunize a further 300 million children in the world's poorest countries by 2025 against diseases such as malaria, polio, and measles. A Navy veteran detained in Iran for nearly 2 years has been released and started making his way home with the first leg on a Swiss government aircraft. US President Donald Trump said Thursday that Michael White had now left Iranian airspace and should be home with his family very soon. The US Special Envoy for Iran, Brian Hook, flew to Zurich with a doctor to meet White and will accompany him to the United States abroad, an American plane. Iran announced 3,574 new coronavirus infections Thursday, its highest daily count since the outbreak began in February. It was the fourth straight day that the daily caseload had topped 3,000. The previous high was 3,186, recorded on March 30th, and the highest of the initial outbreak. The Health Ministry spokesperson said that the surge in new cases might be the result of wider testing rather than a second wave of infection. The Labour Ministry said Lebanon has provided temporary shelter for 35 homeless Ethiopian domestic workers who had camped outside their consulate in the Hazmi area near Beirut after being abandoned by their employers. The ministry organized buses late Wednesday that transported about 35 women left stranded outside the consulate at a hotel in Beirut after they spent the day with their belongings, some of them crying. Lebanon is in the midst of an economic and financial crisis made worse by the lockdown to stem the spread of the coronavirus. The G20 Digital Economy Task Force has held 2 days of consecutive virtual meetings to discuss a comprehensive approach to digital economy policy making and the future of digitalization. Members from G20 countries, guest countries, international and regional organizations addressed the relevance of digitalization in maintaining business operations following the COVID-19 outbreak, the G20 Saudi Secretariat said in a statement. Delegates discussed digitalization in the context of the current crisis with a long-term vision for the best use of digital tools to build economic resiliency and promote job retention. Nations returned to mosques and cafes on Thursday as the country ended most lockdown restrictions after largely containing the spread of the novel coronavirus for now. Schools will stay closed to most students until the start of the new academic year in September, and the government still restricts social gatherings at homes and urges the wearing of masks. International borders will reopen fully in late June. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has called on the International Criminal Court to open a comprehensive investigation into Israel's demolition of Palestinian homes in the occupied West Bank. In a press statement on Wednesday, the ministry stressed that the ICC shall show the required and appropriate attention to this crime, especially as it falls within the jurisdiction of the court and its systems. The ministry reiterated that the full U.S. bias towards the occupation, its colonial plans and projects encourages the occupying power to continue its house demolitions and the displacement of Palestinian citizens. Floods swept through Yemen amid heavy seasonal rains, leaving at least 16 people dead and flooding dozens of homes. The casualties were reported in eastern Hadramaut and southern Shabwa provinces, where it began raining late Wednesday. At least 25 houses were flooded and hundreds of livestock killed in Hadramaut. Yemeni military planes have been rescuing residents trapped in valleys by the flooding. Fierce clashes erupted in the Libyan capital Tripoli, expanding the strategic military zones only hours before the launch of the third round of talks in Geneva among Libya's rivals. Libyan National Army, or the LNA commander Khalifa Haftar, has embarked on a visit to Cairo to hold talks with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and defense officials, a source close to Haftar told Reuters. This is his first visit this year and the fifth since his operation to liberate Tripoli on April 4th of last year. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has harshly criticized Jewish West Bank settler leaders for disparaging President Trump over what they called to be his less than adequate plan, allowing Israel to annex part of the West Bank. Despite what is widely viewed as a pro-Israel peace plan, settler leaders have voiced concern that the maps they have seen leave many settlements as isolated enclaves. They also reject any recognition of a Palestinian state as outlined in the American plan and have pressed Netanyahu to make changes. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun affirmed the country's insistence on the presence of the international forces operating in the south, pointing out that the cabinet has taken a decision to resort to the Security Council to request an extension of its mission for an additional year without modifying its mandate. Concept of operations and special rules of engagement. Prime Minister Hassan Diab emphasized that the continued presence of UNIFIL forces in southern Lebanon is an international need. Tensions surfaced between Moscow and Damascus on Wednesday on the backdrop of the Syrian government disregarding the decision on the return of Iranian forces to important sites. Earlier, Russia and Syria agreed on limiting the access of these forces to such zones. Moscow requested earlier that Syria curbs Iran's presence in the region, especially after Israel's airstrikes against the airport. The government of the United Arab Emirates has announced that the country would resume transit flights after suspending them in March. Abu Dhabi's Etihad Airways said Thursday it will resume carrying transit passengers from certain destinations on June 10th. Passengers from 20 cities in Europe, Asia, and Australia will be allowed to board flights in transit through Abu Dhabi. A new study conducted by the Colorado State University has defined the area that has the cleanest air in the world, the remote southern ocean that encircles Antarctica. The swift climate change driven by human activities has left no area without pollution, but professors and teams from the Department of Atmospheric Science suspected the air directly over the remote southern ocean won't be affected by pollution or certain aerosols produced by human activities or exported from remote lands. During the study, the researchers examined the region by using the bacteria in the air over the Southern Ocean as a diagnostic tool. Rome's famous Colosseum reopened after a 3-month coronavirus lockdown, but just a few hundred people visited Italy's top tourism site. The massive amphitheater, which witnessed savage fights and the gory deaths of unlucky gladiators and wild animals centuries ago, was eerily silent as the first tourists passed through its gates with new health protocols in place. Visitors from within the European Union will be allowed to travel for the first time to Italy, but borders remain closed to tourists from further afield.